I started to wonder if this war would be won, or would be a matter of who would least lose.
That's actually a very good way of putting the War of 1812, because I think, ultimately, it's been called by some people the war that both sides won, but I think it ended as the war that neither side lost, and that was really more the point, because nobody really comes out of it at the end of the day gaining a whole lot, and you're constantly wondering as the war goes on itself, each side's more just trying to avert losing battles in the end. The Americans keep carrying off these invasions of Canada, but they're so badly organized and so badly executed that the generals who are leading them have no confidence in their ability to conquer Canada. So, they come in, sort of shuffle in very hesitantly. The campaigns were very badly operated, and they generally just sort of fell apart. The Canadians repelled them, but it was almost as if it wasn't just that the Canadians and the British government and the British troops repelled them. It was also that the invasion was never really put forward with force, and then they shuffled back across the border, all quite happy to go home. And that was sort of very much the kind of battle it was. And ultimately, I got into the story of the Treaty of Ghent and the negotiations that to end the war sort of started. What I realized was they were as interesting as the war itself, because this was the most ill-conceived war. Well, one of the most ill-conceived wars that America has ever embarked upon. They go to the war, into the war for stated reasons that are so flimsy that there's no validity to their going to war. And not only that, the main cause that they go to war for is actually repealed on the very day that James Madison, the president, declares war on Britain. The issue that they're declaring war on, the British government cancels it because they're trying to avert the war. Of course, it takes 5 months for ships to sail back and forth between America and Britain, so the war's been going for 5 months when the Americans find this information out. So now they're already committed into the war. But under there, of course, was the undercurrent of it. It was the reason, the other major reason they went to war, and they never announced this, is ultimately they've got eyes on Canada and would like to have conquered Canada. But from that very moment that they went down the road to the war, they wanted to end it. And James Madison, the president, is very much always looking for some kind of way to negotiate his way out of this war that he's now got himself into.
I'd always thought that General Brock had been the guy who, galvanized us and got us through the war, and then right at the very end took a shot. Other way around, he was pretty much one of the first guys to fall.
That's right. And General Brock is this fascinating character. This book, I don't give him a huge amount of room, because he
dies at the beginning.
He dies at the beginning.
Not your problem.
Story, so there's nothing much you can do about that. But he was an intriguing person, because I believe if he had survived the Battle of Queenston Heights and had emerged from that battle victorious, which he probably would have, seeing as the battle got won anyway, despite his being killed on the battlefield that day. I think probably within a very short period of time, he would have ended up being the governor of Canada. And the nature of the war would have been fought quite differently, because Brock was a very much, a go forward, inspired commander. His response to how to deal with the issue when Major General Hull of the States brings forward a major army towards Detroit. His initial instinct was, attack them first. They're headed towards us. He's held in constrained, but ultimately does go ahead on his own initiative and bring down the capture of Fort Detroit and the defeat of Hull's army by just sort of threatening that he'll turn the Indians loose on them if they don't surrender. And Hull, is terrified of the Indians, so he surrenders. And so he was quite inspired in his ways of handling, and he was very aggressive. And I think he would have carried the war into the United States much sooner. It wouldn't have happened in 1814 as it does when America is finally invaded by the British. He would have gone in there probably in 1813, and who knows how the war would have turned out.
I still feel like we won.
Is that okay?
That's just fine. And, you know, I think it's an intriguing aspect of it. I kind of in my heart think we won too, because we're still here. As a nation, we're still standing, and had the Americans had their way, we would just be a number of states.
The book is For Honor's Sake, The War of 1812 and the Brokering of an Uneasy Peace. I've been speaking with the author Mark Zuehlke, and For Honor's Sake, published by Knopf Canada.